There's a lot of ways, which makes it extremely versatile. When you have something that you can apply orally, topically, intrarectally, and then into, the blood and into subcutaneously and into the ear canal and into the eye, you know, man, you've got a powerful tool because what a disease process can't you treat with ozone in some way? Not that everything's going to respond to it, but just the fact that it can be utilized in all of these different ways makes it extremely useful in the veterinary practice.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
Welcome, everyone. We have a really cool guest today. We have Jonathan Lowe, who is one of the foremost experts on ozone therapy for animals in the world and the author of the first book of its kind, The Essential Guide to Ozone Therapy for Animals. He is an entrepreneur, public speaker, and the founder of the International Veterinary Ozone Therapy Summit, the first event of its kind designed to bring together thought leaders from around the world. His dedication to evidence-based medicine that works in synergy with the body's biological mechanisms to bring healing is at the core of his quest to see ozone therapy become a central modality in every veterinary clinic. He is also the founder of O3 Vets, which received the Innovation Award from the Innovative Veterinary Care Journal. He resides with his wife, 5 children, and golden retriever near Lansing, Michigan. Hey, welcome, Jonathan Lowe of O3 Vets. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm so grateful for your platinum sponsorship for the House Call and Mobile Vet Virtual Conference that we just had a few weeks ago, and it's been really awesome to get to know you and get to know more about ozone therapy. And so I wanted to go ahead and start the episode with how I usually do. I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite snack that you eat in the car on the way to wherever it is you go when you're working?
Yeah. So not a house call vet. So I'm not doing that type of driving all the time and eating, I guess. But yeah, I think probably some sort of chips is what I'm going to stick with. I like spicy food though. So if it's hot, I actually enjoy that more.
Okay, all right. That's cool. I'm almost like wanting to find out, is there like ozonated food that you can, I know
So
there's ozonated toothpaste. Would you eat ozonated food of any kind?
I would stay miles away from it. Ozone does not taste good.
That's good. We're going to have to talk about this ozonated beverages. We'll get to it. Oh my God. It's exciting. Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about your story and how you got into the wonderful world of ozone?
Yeah. So quite some time back, I was working, we had family business working in the integrative health industry kind of, and on the human side. And I realized at that point, nobody was really working on this ozone therapy stuff for animals. It was all on the human side, literally everything. There were a few veterinarians doing it on their own, but there was no company backing them, providing, education, equipment, all that stuff. They were just kind of taking things that were there for the human use and adapting it, applying it for animals. And so I went to this weird holistic AHVMA conference in Kansas City. And I remember thinking after that, because I had nothing associated with animal medicine, it was all human, like poster and different things, because I'd never done something like that before. I remember thinking, I am never going back to this conference again.
Awesome.
So that was my start. And I said that because, well, that particular year was actually a bad layout for the vendors. So it ended up being just not an ideal scenario. And I wasn't prepared was a big part of it. But since that point, I think I've gone every year. so, so that didn't work out for me. But yeah, so I just started little by little developing equipment, developing training, because really the educational side was what was severely lacking. And so recognized that I couldn't just give somebody a machine and say, hey, have fun with this. It was really important to actually train them on what they could use it for and how to use it. And so we started partnering with a few different veterinarians, and now we've, been able to put an online course in action and have some in-person training and have virtual summits every year. And just trying to really support the veterinarians and the pet guardians to be able to help their patients and their pets get healthy.
That's fantastic. I love that you have like the entire thing built out. Like you provide the machines, the education, the conference. Like that's just wonderful that it's this entire framework that can support veterinarians in learning how to use this modality. And that's so cool that it came. I'm really curious actually about the human side. How long have the humans been using this?
Yeah, those humans. So
And in what context has it been used in human veterinary medicine?
So the history goes back a long time. I think in 1932 or something, Dr. Fish was using it for, as a German doctor, and using it in different applications. And there were textbooks and different things way back a long time ago. Then antibiotics and different things came along, penicillin and things that ozone therapy was starting in a few places to make a mark, but it really, I would say, dipped off the globe for many years, even though some research was being carried out in different places. So it's been around quite a while. But as far as actually being utilized to any scale, I would say, in the 2000s, you start to get a little bit more interest. If you look at the research that's on PubMed, you'll see really in the last, since COVID in particular, you see a spike in research. And I think that's, due to antibiotic resistance. It's due to maybe a need for natural, powerful tools that help to fight infection and fight inflammation. And there's also more of an interest in more natural, powerful tools among just the general public. And so even though it's been around for a while, really the interest is growing now. And veterinary medicine, except for a few spots, Brazil being one of them, that it does quite a bit there. There's not a whole lot going on yet. And so we're working on that, right? To try to really educate and develop the equipment and training necessary to support the veterinarians to be able to do what they need to do.
That's awesome. So in Brazil, you guys are leaning into it more so in Brazil? Is that
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, our chief veterinary officer is Brazilian, and he's a guy who's extremely knowledgeable in ozone therapy. And it's standard care down there now,
oh,
especially in veterinary medicine. So they utilize it all over the place. It's not just relegated to alternative medicine down there. And that's really where we need to get here as well.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Before we hit the record button, we were talking a little bit about the research and how veterinarians want to know more about the research, and we will
Mhm.
tag studies in the show notes after this. And it's just you said something really funny that I thought was worth paired repeating that, you take a new modality and everyone's like, where's the research? Where are the studies? But you put out a new medication, a new pharmaceutical, and people just willy nilly hop on board. No one gives a damn about that. medication. But if it's something new and quote unquote alternative, it's suddenly suspect, even mushrooms. I had some questions in my mushroom lecture. Where's the research? It's everywhere. But anyway, I thought that was a funny
It's just
contrast.
how, yeah, it's how people view it. And it's funny because on that note, almost half of all new drug studies are based on one clinical trial. So it's interesting that when people say, because if you go look on the Cochrane Library or Science Direct or PubMed, you'll find over 800, 900 studies, scientific articles, different research articles that have been done. If you go look on Elsevier or Google Scholar, you're up to 5,000 to 16,000 different citations and studies and all this stuff. So, but all of that seemingly is discredited oftentimes because of one reason or another, but primarily it's because we have a bias. We have a bias against things that haven't been taught in the universities here in the United States. And it takes a lot. It's funny because somebody will trust their colleague or an aunt or an uncle or a sister if they recommend it because they were helped by it.
Yeah.
But they won't go look at the research. And if they do, they'll try to find every reason to throw it out if
Yeah.
it's something that it's just they haven't really heard about. And that's, to be honest, it's just pride. Like we are prideful people. And when we come up against something that, we haven't heard about, it's a reflex, I think, that I know better, or I didn't hear about that or whatever. And so we just throw it out. But the reality is there's lots of research. There's some good studies. There's some good papers and articles that are scientific that really help to explain the science in a way that will really help make sense of it to the average veterinarian, I think. So like you said, we can link some of those in the description.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. It's a lot of pride. It's a lot of, almost like I want to say the old guard. We didn't
Yeah.
learn that in school, therefore it can't be valid. And some of it's like, when looking at the studies that exist or looking at the evidence, there's confirmation bias against the new thing. Always, we're known as a profession as being very stuck in our ways. And it is its pride. In like my last episode that I recorded on this podcast, we talked about the phrase, I already know that, and how toxic and dangerous it is. And if we didn't learn it in vet school, then it's not worth knowing, that kind of thing. That's the kind of corollary, right? Or if a holistic person is doing it, it must rule it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Very, very interesting. And I just love this topic so much because so many house call vets are very holistically minded or at least open to holistic paradigms and integrative paradigms. And I believe personally that the entire house call modality and paradigm itself is holistic by nature, being in the home of the animal and meeting the animal where they are. And my phrase that I've started, maybe I coined it, I don't know. But the phrase that I use is that we're on dog and cat time when we're in house calls. We're on their time. That's a very holistic, novel, outside the box way to think. And while I may have kind of coined that term or started using that term, the house call world has been operating in that paradigm for a very long time. We have an ETA window, just like the plumber does. The plumber works on pipe time or toilet time. We work on dog and cat time. However long the thing takes, that's how long it takes. And that's a very holistic perspective for healing, I believe. And I think that open mindedness to, even though you didn't learn it in vet school, even though you didn't learn it in residency, I didn't learn that in surgical residency, I didn't learn that in internship, I learned it nowhere but anecdotally and experientially out in the field. And I learned also from the anecdotal reports of its success. If it's going well, I want to know about it. Why would I deprive a patient of something that could help, can't hurt, most likely does help, has research? Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, there is not only the research, I mean, empirical evidence is evidence. So, I mean, you look at what it does for a patient. And I mean, we've got so many different stories that I could recount, but just really quick, one right now is from a Dr. Dan Aarons in Texas. And they had this dog come in with a cardiac cancer that had metastasized to the lungs and liver. I mean, it was dying. It was in bad shape. And the owners, they wanted more holistic means. They're like, yeah, this is a long shot, but let's do it. So they did one treatment per day for 5 days. They had this ultrasounded. They had found it. They had diagnosed it by a specialist and then did that and then did a couple of treatments the next week. So 7 total treatments, I believe. And they took it back to Texas A&M and had an ultrasound and they couldn't find any cancer. And
That's awesome.
so it was an insane response. We've had a number of those. Those are the miracle cases. Those are the ones that, stand out, of course. But we've had a lot in between that and the poor responses. There's always a gamut, it runs a spectrum and it's not a silver bullet. But ozone therapy, when you see the effects of ozone therapy in these astounding cases, you can't just sit there and look at that and say, it doesn't do anything. People, oh no, it did something. And there's the testimony. And so you go look at the evidence tab on o3vets.com on our website, and you'll find a lot of stories, a lot of studies and things. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And can we back up actually for folks who know zero, zilch, zip, nothing about ozone? Can we do like a mini ozone 101?
Yeah.
How does it work? What is it used for? Yeah. And we'll get into some of the research behind the therapeutic modality. Tell us a little bit, brain dump on ozone for us, if you can.
Yeah. So I always ask people, what do you think of when you hear the word ozone? It's usually one of two things. Hey, I'll ask you, what do you think of the word ozone?
Well, free association. I think like outer space. I think of us.
Yeah,
Ozone.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the ozone layer is number one, right? And then number two might be smog and kind of like it's dangerous because it's associated with smog and we measure it to measure what the smog levels are. So ozone is a reactive gas. It's 3 oxygen atoms all combined sharing electrons and they don't share well. So it's always looking to break down into its more stable form of oxygen. Sometimes I'll say it's oxygen on steroids. It's just a really powerful reactive form of oxygen. It's not good for the respiratory tract. So that's why people view it as dangerous. The only way we don't want to administer ozone is through breathing it. So we avoid that. But smelling ozone here and there is not dangerous. It's long-term exposure at significant levels. That's the problem. But it's a reactive molecule. It's a gas. It breaks down quickly, so we can't store it. That's why you need an ozone generator in the clinic to utilize ozone therapy in a clinic. One exception kind of to that is you can ozonate oils. So oils have what's called double bonds. They have all these double bonds, some more and some less. So like olive oil is a mid-grade. It has quite a few, but not as many double bonds as sunflower seed oil. We can ozonate those oils. We basically just percolate ozone through it for a period of time. It's a little more complex than that, and then those oils can hold and trap that ozone as an ozonide and do so for years. So that's the one exception. We can utilize it topically as an ozonated oil. Otherwise, you need to generate the ozone on demand. And so basically when ozone comes into contact with organic matter, so let's just make this a little more practical. Let's say a dog comes into the clinic and you determine that it's got IBD, right? And you want to use ozone as part of the treatment protocol. So at that point, you have to decide, how are we going to administer the ozone? We have an ozone generator here. How are we going to administer it? And then I'll kind of explain what's happening on the science side of it in a sec. But so you'll decide that. In this case, probably we're going to do actually rectal insufflation, which I know sounds weird, maybe a little crass, but it's one of the easiest ways to do ozone. It's basically like taking a rectal temperature. So for a veterinarian, that's nothing. That's super simple, fast, easy, not out of the norm. But sometimes for the pet guardian, it's a little weird. But so rectal insufflation, we'll take a syringe, we'll drop ozone gas from our generator, we'll attach a rectal catheter, and we'll just infuse, it's like an enema. We'll infuse that gas directly into the rectum. That is taken up, absorbed into the portal vein, into the capillaries there, and into the bloodstream ultimately. And those ozonides, it's transformed into ozonides. Those are what are transferred around the body. And those ozonides become signaling cells, basically, signaling molecules, rather. So in our body, there's this continual kind of balancing effect of antioxidants and oxidation occurring. You breathe, we take in oxygen, and oxidation is occurring. And that's a good thing because we need cellular energy and oxygen helps provide that, et cetera. But too much oxidation occurring means that we've got chronic inflammation. We've got problems that left to themselves will create long-term disease. And so the body is always balancing, producing antioxidants, glutathione being one of them, the primary one, and other antioxidants to help create a good balance in the system. Well, with many chronic diseases and as we age, our body's ability to produce antioxidants oftentimes falters. And part of that process is a reduced efficiency in cellular signaling. So just like if you're let's say you're hiking through the mountains and you lose cell phone service because cell phone tower is on another mountaintop and you're way down in the valley and there's no communication, you're losing the signal out there. Same thing happens with cells. And when they lose communication in between themselves, they break down and die. And so ozone actually helps restore some of that communication that's lacking. It uses its oxidative power to do that. And it can actually help in many diseases because of its capacity to do that. And along with that, there's a number of different clinical effects. There's, different things that are happening in the body. It is an antimicrobial. That's not the primary thing when we're using ozone internally, but it helps to increase oxygenation. It helps to improve oxygen utilization, which improves cellular energy or ATP production. It actually does a number of things with the immune system itself that help to modulate the production of interleukins and heat shock protein 70. So if you go look at the research, you're going to see a lot on those aspects. And so it is a complex mechanism. It's not necessarily simple. We don't know everything yet, but there's a lot of research that you can go look at that helps to really form the foundation of why you should use ozone therapy and why it's so powerful.
That's amazing. And can you tell me a little bit about the clinical application? So you mentioned the IBD and the rectal insufflation. And I know we can use this for resistant infections, antimicrobial resistance coming up makes it more relevant. As you mentioned, we can use this for wounds and topical. It's in toothpaste, it's in mouthwash and things like that.
Mhm.
And I've seen people give it along with fecal transplants. You can give it subcutaneous, IV. Can you talk about these different kind of clinical applications and different methods through which you can administer it? And I had one other question. Uh, I can't help myself. I was discussing with one of my clients who gets ozone therapy herself and her cat gets ozone therapy. I'd previously been referring this out to one of my lovely colleagues who offers ozone therapy, but I'm now, thanks to Jonathan, will be offering it myself. I'm really excited. So this client of mine told me that I believe she had an ozone rectal insufflation herself, and she said it was quite painful. I don't see that I've ever, for animals getting rectal enemas or rectal anything, having these pain responses. Have you encountered that, or do you recommend sedation or anesthesia, pain medication, anything like that for animals? I don't know if the human GI tract is more pain sensitive to distension in the GI tract, or I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. But just curious, I thought I'd throw that in your direction along with the other questions I just asked.
Yeah. So I'll address that one first and then go back to your previous question is I've never heard anyone say that rectal insufflation is painful. So it's not normal. I don't know why it would have been. The ozone isn't the painful part. So something they did in a technique had to be the issue there. But no, it's not a painful treatment. If anybody's ever had any sort of enema, I mean, the catheter is like a centimeter. So it's not big at all. The diameter is really small. And so I think if maybe there was constipation or something and you're doing rectal insufflation, that could be an issue potentially, but otherwise not a painful thing. There's more than 15, 16 different ways you can administer ozone. So lots from joint injection and distal injections to lavaging externally to ozonated oils to something we call major autohemotherapy, where we would draw blood and infuse ozone into it, put it back, to ozonated subcutaneous saline. So there's a lot of ways, which makes it extremely versatile. When you have something that you can apply orally, topically, intrarectally, and then into, the blood and into subcutaneously and into the ear canal and into the eye, man, you've got a powerful tool because what a disease process can't you treat with ozone in some way? Not that everything's going to respond to it, but just the fact that it can be utilized in all of these different ways makes it extremely useful in the veterinary practice. So they're using it in surgeries, they're using it in dentals, they're using it in just general medicine, of course, for different immune diseases and immune mediated diseases and different types of cancers. We have a number of oncologists who are using this in their practice. So we call it a non-specific treatment. It's not like a drug that's been developed for a specific application. This is something that helps modify a biological response. And as a biological response modifier, it's a non-specific treatment that has some really powerful effects that help the body do what it's supposed to do. And that's where ozone therapy fits. And so you have to have a paradigm that allows for that if you're going to latch onto it and say, yeah, I can wrap my head around this. I can understand this. I know the body's complex. I accept that. I understand I don't know everything. And, this is really doing something pretty amazing. So when the pet comes in, you determine what the disease is, and then you pair it with the application that best suits the need. So,
Fantastic. And just out of my own curiosity, I think I know the answer to this. Is there any difference in efficacy between administering ozone via ozonated saline subcutaneous versus the IV version? Or does it just completely depend on the disease process that you're trying to address?
yeah, number one, yes, it does depend on that at times. There's two categories of application. You have your systemic and then local. So if we're treating something that is systemic, a systemic disease, we're going to use a systemic treatment method, subcutaneous saline, rectal insufflation, or major autohemotherapy, one of the three. If it's, an ear infection or a corneal ulcer or a hot spot, we'll use a local application. We might also use a systemic one because there's something bigger going on maybe in some of these cases, but we'll definitely apply it right directly to that area as well. And so as far as like, if you compare the systemic treatments between the three of them, say, which one should I use? A lot of times it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other, doesn't matter. Not a big difference in how you do it that way. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's really helpful because I think it improves accessibility to know that you don't have to administer this intravenously. Thereby, you have to place an
Yeah.
IV catheter, you have to sit with the animal for a long period of time, and you have to have staff. And, that you can administer this rectally or subcutaneously makes it much more accessible, not only for vet in general, but specifically for house call vets to have access to that. And so I wanted to shift a little bit. You guys have at least one product and have clearly thought about how to make this mobile and available on maybe a smaller scale than like a big, huge clinic so that people like me who are going into the home providing ozone, or I will be anyway. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I can't even. I'm really excited. It's like this, like amazing. Okay, I'll let you take over the subject, but before I run my mouth on it, but talk to me a little bit about how this modality is very much usable for house call veterinarians, how it makes sense for people like me to be using this and making our own ozone, learning about
Mm.
it.
Yeah. Well, the newest device that we have generator is called the Monarch, and it's basically just built into a briefcase. And so it's very portable. It's about 12 pounds. It has a little spot in there for a small oxygen tank, which you need to create pure medical ozone. So you need oxygen and an ozone generator. And so you have that in this little portable case, about 14 inches by 12 inches, by 4 inches. So it's portable. It can be easily carried by pretty much anyone. My 4-year-old daughter could carry it, so I don't think that should be a huge issue for most people. And you can take it right into the house and you can create ozone and use it right there. If you're going to do rectal insufflation, that's about a 5-minute process. It's not a lot of time. You consider some of the, different things you have to do as a veterinarian, acupuncture and different things. It can take a little bit of time, to do that. And that's okay. But this doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it doesn't have to take a lot of space, and it doesn't have to take a lot of money, actually. So it's actually pretty easy to get into because the learning curve is really short. We can get you up and running in 3 hours or less as far as being able to do the basics. And you don't have to go to years of school or, hours of training to be able to start using this in a day or two, And so I think that makes it very accessible for any veterinarian, but especially for house call practice too.
Yeah, and we're folks who are interested in house call practice. I mean, I mentioned that I think that the house call paradigm is itself inherently holistic, but we also, like on another level, tend to attract clients who want holistic care, like more like formally holistic care for animals. I can't tell you how many people have Now I'm in Los Angeles, so we'll take it with a grain of salt, but have literally asked me specifically for ozone therapy. Do you offer this? And now I can tell them, yes, I do. And previously, those clients would have kept searching for the vet that offers
Mhm.
it. Like people know about this, it's out there, and it behooves us as practitioners, especially with a clientele that is interested in holistic modalities, especially up and coming ones that are gaining more and more legitimacy from the research itself and just generally awareness of it in holistic spaces, animal caregivers. So I think as house call vets, we're much more inclined to come across clients who specifically want it than anywhere else. So I think it's a good thing for us to dip our toes in here and get educated about ozone. And kind of on that note, also, I'm just curious to hear. So I want to say thank you again for your amazingly generous support for the House Call and Mobile Vet Conference, that virtual conference that we had in early February. It was amazing to have you there and have your support. And what I thought was like really cool, I was just kind of excited about this cute little synchronicity that for those of you who joined us, we had our amazing keynote speaker who was an astronaut, Katie Coleman, and we got to have our ozone guy introduce our astronaut, and she was wonderful. It was just like a really great moment that was just perfect. And I was just curious to hear what your experience was like at the conference. I hope you enjoyed yourself. It was great to have you there. So yeah,
Yeah,
just
no,
to hear your experience.
yeah, no, you do a great job with the conference. I think it was really good. Sometimes virtual conferences can be boring and difficult to sit through. And so I think you did a really good job at making it interactive. And Dr. Coleman, yeah, it was a pleasure and an honor to be able to do that and to quote, meet her in one sense, and amazing woman who's really contributed a lot to society and to the world. And that's amazing to see and to have that at your conference was really cool. But yeah, I'd recommend anybody being a part of it, and I hope to in the future as well.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, she did such a good job. I mean, I think so many people were like, "Why do you have an astronaut here?" And I'm like, "Just wait, you'll see." Oh my god, just the pictures and the video from outer space was like
Yeah.
unbelievable. People were crying during her keynote. It was myself included. I was like wiping tears
Mhm.
away, like how beautiful, my god. And on that note, I know that you also have a little virtual conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we have two that we do each year. One is for veterinarians and veterinary professionals. The other is for pet guardians, just to educate them and get them really excited about going out and using this in various ways. So April 20th this year, 2024, we have one. And then we'll, of course, have one basically every spring for the veterinarians. And so I think it's a great opportunity. It's really inexpensive. It's just one day. We record it, so if you miss some of it, you can get it later. And it's international. I try to. There's ozone being done in veterinary medicine around the world. One of my goals is really to help connect us as not us veterinarians. I'm not a veterinarian from around the world to be able to tap into their knowledge and recognize we don't have the quarter on the market, and so bringing in a few different speakers, one from France, one from Brazil this year, one from Mexico. I can't remember all of them. And then some from the US. And so I'd encourage anybody to take a look at that, vetozonesummit.com/2024 will be this year's conference. And maybe we can link that possibly. But yeah, that's it. And then for pet guardians as well, we do one just to really help educate them a little bit more on what ozone therapy is as well.
That's wonderful. So we could potentially send our clients to get some training and get in the know about what the modality is and see if it's something that they'd like to check out. So great that you cover the subject from every angle. And I love that you're connecting the world and doing this international project. I relate to that very much. I get so much joy out of speaking to people in Africa and people in the Netherlands and Canada and, all over the place. And in our podcast, but also the conference, we have international folks. It's so much fun. And it's just like, man, we have so much to learn from each other. It's unbelievable. And to think that we maybe know it all is unbelievable. So yeah, I love that international aspect and that connectedness. That's wonderful. And so closing up the episode here, before I ask for your order in the House Call Vet Cafe, is there anything else that you'd like folks to know about you or about Ozone or anything else kind of lingering on your mind?
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be with you. I think if anyone wants to know anything else, go to o3vets.com and you can reach us there via phone or email or whatever method you prefer. And we'll try to help you out. We have a pretty good Facebook community, a good YouTube channel where you can find resources, videos, etc. So if you just go search for it, you'll probably find what you're looking for.
Amazing. All right. So now's the time for me to ask, what's your favorite beverage? What would you like to order today in the House Call Vet Cafe?
So yeah, great question. So I'm a dark roast guy. So I'm pretty much quite a bit of coffee and gonna go with a dark roast with a little bit of cream and sugar if I can.
Delicious. Sounds great. Amazing. Well, I'll be here bubbling up some ozonated champagne and maybe sometime in real life we'll have a real cheers to that. Anyway, I don't know. Can you actually ingest ozone like
Yeah,
orally? What
you
tastes
can.
can?
You can ozonate water and drink it. Some people do that. There's no studies on it, but it's, you know, but a lot of people do it. It's just not one of the ways that, like in the medical community, they've really studied the effects of that. I do it every now and again for sure. And it certainly the ozone is absorbed as it goes down. As it mixes with stomach acids, it probably neutralizes whatever ozone is left over. So
Mhm. Oh, that's
yeah.
fascinating. I'm trying to end the episode, but I keep having new thoughts. Like, what if there's like esophagitis or something and you drink nice, like ozonated coating beverage or something? I don't know. I'm feeling a sense that we might have to go into business with like ozonated mushroom coffee. I think that's the next frontier here. Anyway, it's been so nice to have you. And I love our collaboration. I'm so appreciative for your support. And I can't wait for the House Call Vet community to really dig into the world of ozone and for our patients to benefit from this exciting modality. So thanks again. And I can't wait for what's next.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as the House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for House Call Vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.